start again talking about the topic of vestos, just to go over it to make sure everybody has clear. When we see dam, so we have to see if we can see a pattern. If we find a pattern, not see if we can see a pattern. We assume that there's some kind of pattern which governed this re'iyah, and because it happened one time, it'll happen again. Okay, so there's different patterns, and each one of them are legitimate. Basically, one pattern is the amount of time that passes, and the other pattern is the day of the month. Okay, so we say next month we have to copy those patterns, and therefore, if it comes the next day of the month, then we'll do that. And if it comes the amount of time that it was last time, we'll be careful for that also. And as a default, we'll always worry about the 30th day, because the 30th day is the most normal pattern for there to be, and so there's always a possibility that she'll go back to being the normal teva and have a 30-day re'iyah. All of these things are only considered a continuation of the last re'iyah when it's the same period of the day or the night. If it's she saw a day, then it will be a repetition to see during the day on that day of the month, or that amount of time to pass. If it's not that way, if she saw at night, then it's a repetition to see at night. But it wouldn't be considered a repetition for her to see on the 10th of Iyar, then to re-see on the 10th of Sivan, if it's one in the day and one in the night. It's obviously a different system, and therefore we don't have to worry about it. I said that very, very quickly. Did anybody not understand what I said? You understood? Mayan, you with me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay. The one thing that gets a little complicated, which we didn't discuss last time, which is what happens when, let's say we have a situation of she saw in a 30-day cycle, okay? Then next month comes and she sees in the 25 days later, okay? So if you think about it, this is a little technical problem, because so she saw on day 25, so we know that she's usher now, but what's going to happen next month? So next month, of course, we're going to have to worry about 25, but let's say 25 comes, does that mean that we're going to go back to 30? So in the case of 30, it's not so relevant, but I should change the case, make it more relevant. So we'll say like this. So she saw the first day 28 days, and then the next time she saw 25 days. Okay, so let's say we'll put it in months to make it clearer. On Nisan, she saw on 28. On Iyar, she saw on 25. Come Sivan, and she didn't see on day 25. Okay, so she was careful. They did a bedika. They weren't together on day 25. Now the question is, when it comes to day 28, what do you do? Why is this a question?
Be careful for day 28 and also 30, and also the day of month.
Right. So there is a thought to say that 25, since 25 came and didn't replace 28, it's just an earlier sighting. So we will count 28 from day 25 and say that even the cycle the body works is that if 25 doesn't come in, 28 will come in. That make sense to you?
Yeah, makes sense.
Okay. So I'm happy it makes sense to you.
So how many times?
Until 28 is taken away. It means to say it gets to 28 and she didn't see, then we know it's gone. This is all assuming that she didn't have it 3 times. She only had, this is all of the whole conversation is when she said it 1 time. And we're saying that the fact that something came earlier doesn't mean that the other one is not going to come. We'll say that the earlier one might come and the later one might also come. How will it also come? It'll come 28 days from the 25th day she saw. Just to tell you that this is a minig Ashkenaz, and there's other shittas in the world, but this is what the Ashkenazim do. Okay?
Will you also tell us what Sephardim did?
I was asked not to. If it's important to you, I'll tell you, but it's I think that there's a point of that saying that there's a lack, when you get confused, when you get a lot of shittas, it's confusing. Let's rather get that clear, and if you ever have a Sephardi kala, then meaning to say that they're going to be no expiry shitas, then you can send them to me and I'll tell you. Make sense to you? What do you say?
The 28 days, the best of Kavua.
No, I was talking. My story was that she saw one time 28, then she saw one time 25. Now, the third month 25 comes, and she's not going to see. She didn't see 25, so now 25 is out. The question is 28 back in as a chashash?
She might have 2 months to go 27.
So it's the same thing. 27. If she had 2 months to go 27.
You say every month she has to go back 2 months.
Not always. Depends. If it's earlier, by having something which is earlier, you have no indication that the later one didn't come. So you're right. Technically speaking, it could be that if a woman saw 28, 27, 25, right? Then it could come the next month where she has to worry about 25, 27, and 28. Okay? Is that clear?
Yes, thank you. Yes, clear.
Okay. There is a topic which we started talking about a few minutes ago, which is called a Veses Hasirug, or I'm sorry, a Veses Adilug, where is that it, like you said before, that it counts months, and like we spoke about before, 25. If a woman says 25, 26, and 27, and then 28, so we see a process of 25, 26, and 27. We see a process already of some kind of system that keeps going up and up and up and up and up. Okay? So,
Wait, it is considered a pattern.
what do you say?
It is considered a pattern?
Yes. If it's the same pattern, in other words, if it skips one day, it goes higher one day, or it goes lower one day, it is considered a pattern. And therefore, initially when we were making this pattern, we don't worry about it. But if it happens to have 3 times, in other words, we see 25, then 26, and then 27, so it's clear that there's some kind of pattern over here, right? Then we start already 28, we consider the Veses Kavua. And therefore, we're going to have to, it'll take 3 times for us to get rid of it. Now, this gets a little bit more complicated because, so what will happen is like this. Let's say she sees 26, 27, 28, okay? Then it comes the next month and she sees 30. Okay? So that's a diversion. But we still have to be choshesh for not only for 30, but also 29. Because 29 was the next logical step in the process of 26, 27, 28. It didn't happen this past time, so we'll say, okay, this could be a diversion 1 time. But I need to have 3 times to knock it out. So I have to go back and see, maybe next time it will come 29.
That means she got next time 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30.
No. It means that she goes 29 and 30. Why? Because 26, 27, 28, the fact that you pass 26 or 27 means it's not a Veses. But the fact there's a buildup, we see 26, 27, 28. There's something going on, some kind of system. The next one in the system is 29. Right? 30 you have to worry about because anyway, I own a Baininus. Okay? There are some complications in this type of system when you have patterns. What I would basically teach the Kalas is pay attention if there's patterns. If there's patterns, bring it to somebody who learned Vestas and you'll see if it's relevant. Right? It doesn't happen very often. Okay, I mentioned it only because it's something that you need to know about, that it exists, but it's a very rare thing. In general, Vestas, the being kavua, are a very rare thing, and therefore you don't. It's not. I don't. There's a lot of halachas I can talk about in Vestas kavua, but I don't think it's relevant because most women are not kavua, and to put all this energy into figuring it out and trying to remember it and teach it to the kalos. What I would teach the kalos is if you see a system of 3 times that it got set in stone, then now again bring it to the Rav who you're doing it, he'll tell you what to do. In other words, you have to remember that you're teaching a kala, she has a lot going on in her brain, and she can't, the chasanim also, and this is very complicated halachic things, it's not worth it. The main thing you're trying to teach them is not to mess up the initial sleeping together when there's a reason to say that she's going to see dam. After all the complications, and then she sees she's kavua and it's going to switch, and just bring it to somebody who knows vestas, and they'll help her figure it out. Okay. I just wanted to give you the basic formulas that you can know how to keep the halacha in a basic way. There's another thing called the vestas haguf, which is also very not common, which means that a woman has a specific symptom in her body that right away it causes dam. Right? In other words, something which is not just she has stomach ache, but you can't really make a period of time. But if she has a specific system where it works like clockwork, that she has this feeling and then she sees dam, right? She has this feeling and she knows exactly how long it's going to take her to see the dam. It's specific, then that's called a vesas haguf. And it's also a reason to say that when you have this thing, that it's to be choshesh that the dam is coming. And therefore you wouldn't be together then. It's also very not common.
Is it like this biblical feeling that you were talking about before, the hargasha?
No. No, it's like let's say she burps, or she has very strong specific stomach pains, or a certain part of her body really hurts, right?
How do we know that that's not the hargasha? That's not what was meant to be hargasha.
It's a different discussion. Hargasha means to say that there's a feeling of opening inside. What this is that there's a feeling of pains or heaviness on the varim, or she has a lot of burping going on. Anyway, it's extremely uncommon, and if a woman does have a situation where she can basically tell, "Oh, this comes now, I know that I'm going to see," then obviously that time she should stay away from. She shouldn't be together with her husband, because look, obviously this thing is coming. It connects, but it has to be that they see some real connection between this pain and an immediate way of figuring out. It's not like, women know that they're going to have vestas in the next few days. Okay, that doesn't mean anything because it's not accurate to any period of time. But if it's like very clear, this happens and then I see dam, then it's an issue. Okay. If ever there's a cause, an external cause for a woman to see dam, right? For example, something very traumatic happened, and she saw dam, or she did some kind of jumping and she saw dam. Okay, what that does is it invalidates. There's no reason to assume that has anything to do with anything else, right? And therefore, the day that she sees is not called a vesas b'chal. As an example, a very practical example of this is birth control pills, right? When a woman stops taking birth control pills, so within 24 or 48 hours, she'll see blood, no matter what she's going to do, right? Once a woman is taking birth control pills, and the reason she sees is because she stopped taking birth control pills, there's no reason to call that day a Yom HaVesas. Because it has nothing to do with the day or the time she passed. It has to do with the fact that the birth control pills came, and it's an external cause, and it means nothing.
And generally, you said that we can blame it on someone else, on something else. It's usually
if it's real. In other words, if she jumps and she sees dam, she heard something traumatic and she saw dam right away, right? So that means that has nothing to do with that traumatic experience. It's nothing to do with the actual day. So why in the world should we blame it on the day? And the only part of vestas that you'd have in this situation is assuming that there's no other external causes. 30 days later, you have to worry about dam coming back, because since there's an external system which causes the dam, but it's not going to stay, it's going to go back to a system. What system is going to go in? Well, it didn't have a system beforehand. What's the most natural system? 30 days. Okay. When a woman gets pregnant, so two things happen. She usually does not see dam. In the time of the Gemara, it was common for a woman to see dam for the first 3 months. And nowadays it's uncommon. So Rav Moshe says that we should still be careful, even if a woman knows she's pregnant, for the first month to also check on the day of the Vestas. Now, only because that's what used to be in the time of the Gemara, so we could back. However, b'derech klal, once you do it one time, you're finished. Because unless you have a Vestas kavua, right, and it didn't come, so all the Vestas are off, and you can't even count 30 days, because 30 days from what? She hasn't seen dam. So there is no 30 days anymore. So basically, after 1 month passing, we're finished with Vestas on a practical level. Unless she has a Vestas kavua. But if I have Vestas kavua, nothing to worry about. The same thing is true as after birth. After birth, in the time of the Gemara, woman did not see dam for 2 years after a baby. And therefore there was no reason to be choshesh for any Vestas, and she was totally mutaris to her husband the entire time. Meaning to say, there was blood after the labor, and that was, let's say, 30-something days, 60-something days, depending on a boy or a girl. Then she cleaned up, and she didn't have any dam because the cycle of the eggs and that it wasn't activated. Nowadays, it's activated much earlier. So basically, until she starts seeing, we don't have anything to worry about. Once she starts seeing, from that point on, then we start counting Vestos. How do we do it? So if there was no Vestas kavua before the baby, which she got pregnant, so then as soon as she sees, we start counting 30, right? And then when we have systems, for example, let's say the first month we could say we have a chodesh, right? After 2 months we can say we have a certain span of time in between, right? And we have 30 days. So basically it's like restarting the system after she sees dam. If she has a Vestas kavua, then what happens is that once she starts seeing, she counts from that point to her Vestas kavua. Okay. Okay, a woman who chas v'shalom has a miscarriage. So the miscarriage, it really depends on how early the baby was. Okay, no matter what, she's going to have to wait Shiva Nikiyim. However, if the baby was alive for 40 days, and then not only is there an issue of the dam that comes out that she needs Shiva Nikiyim, she also needs to wait the 14 days of having a baby girl, because we don't know if it's a boy or a girl. And once she's pregnant, maybe she had a baby girl, and therefore she's tamei without dam for 14 days. So practically speaking, what it means is that you can't go to the mikvah before 14 days after the hapala, even if she's clean from dam. You have to make sure she waits 14 days after meaning the 15th day after the hapala. She can go to the mikvah. It's not so shechiach, because most of the time women don't clean up that fast, but if they do, there could be a day or two that it makes a relevance. Was that clear? Did I explain that properly?
Yes. Also, I want to hear how practically it's. Okay, wait. I'll word the question and ask it in the end.
Okay.
And if she knows that it was a boy, then it's less.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Usually at that point in time, I don't think you can tell. talking about 40, 42 days. I don't know how you're going to tell. Okay. A person who started taking birth control. So we spoke about that the birth control, there's really 2 points to birth control. Once you stop taking birth control, the way I understand the Mitzias is that within 24 hours, you can continue taking the birth control, and the body doesn't know yet. So those first 24 hours are totally fine. Okay? After that 24-hour period, it's basically a downhill road from there. You're basically 100% going to see Dam. The question is how fast, within another 24 hours or another 48 hours. Okay? So it's obvious to me that from that point on, after the first 24 hours, whatever, not exactly 24, 26, 27, at a certain point, you're already messing with fire, probably more fire than ever before, because the body is already kicking in that you're going to see Dam. And to be together after that point is clearly suicidal, right? Because we know that being together can bring the Dam back, bring the Dam in quickly. And so it's basically after 24 hours, when it's 24-hour period, you can still take, anytime you can still take the pill and it will continue the process, akol tov. But if after the point you waited, where if you since you skipped the pill, it very possibly will not work, and therefore you either will see Dam or we won't be protected from getting pregnant. That's a certain point where you shouldn't be together anymore. Not a halacha, just a seichel thing. Now, one second. So now, what happens when a woman takes birth control pills? And what she's trying to accomplish is that she shouldn't have a vesses. Okay? And now she has a vesses from beforehand. She shouldn't see Dam, and she has a system of where she was using until now. So it comes, let's say she took birth control pills, and it comes day 30. Or it comes what she saw last month, which is day 25. Okay? So since we don't know if these birth control pills work for her, because even if they work for other people, they don't necessarily work for her. So therefore, we say the first time she should be choishesh for ona beinanis for the 30th day and the vesses she had beforehand. If after that point, right, and we know that it's passed, so we're finished because the vesses didn't happen, and there's nothing to worry about. But if she has a vesses kavua, so there are those that say that even though birth control pills work for other people, since we don't know if it works for her, she should still worry about the vesses until 3 times where she knows that the birth control works against her vesses. That make sense to you? Okay. 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 Let's talk about the night of the Kala. Any questions so far on Vestas before we go on to another topic?
No, it's good.
Okay.
Well, ask my question.
Okay. There is a kula, which you have to be wise to use, that if the husband's going on a trip and he's going to be disappearing for a while, and it's a day of the Vestas and they want to be together, so because it's a time where she's going to miss him a lot and it's painful, so Chazal had a kula that they should be together even if it's a day of the Vestas, right? It's a kula that some disagree with, and I would say it's definitely a dangerous thing to do, right? Because but if it's very necessary and you feel like you're not going to see Dam, then there is a makom to be makel on that if it's important. Okay?
Well, she can be sure that that needs to be done.
She can't be sure, but since it's not a for sure thing she's going to see. It's only a reason to be careful, and there's pain going on in the relationship. She's going to miss her husband, so we make her for that situation. Shows you how important it was to Chazal the feeling of missing your husband. Okay, Akala. One second. Okay, Akala for two things. First of all, Akala has bisulim in a lot of cases, Zat Hashem, and therefore her bedika is harder to do than other women. So it's important to teach Akala that she should do a bedika to the point where she is able to do it. But the bedika she does after she gets married will be deeper, and it needs to be deeper because it's not the depth that's supposed to happen. Okay. Okay, so anyway, a kala, the halacha l'maisa of dam besulim is a woman who is the night of the chasana, so the dam comes out. So it was a takana, later takana, which actually isn't meikar adin, because meikar adin, the dam of besulim is just like a makkah. It's just like she got a cut inside of the Beis HaRechem, and this dam besulim is not at all a reason to become asar. But at some point in Klal Yisrael, they made a takana that we're going to treat dam besulim like it's really dam, but only after they finish. In other words, if during the time they're together there's dam coming out all over the place, it makes no difference whatsoever. It's not really dam, right? The only time they have a problem with dam is when you finish the bia. Okay. Now, if a person is chas v'sholom in the middle of where they're together, they have dam. When it's not dam besulim, then the couple has to stop right away, and he has to wait till his bris gets soft, and he shouldn't come out when it's hard, because when she's really a נידה, then it's a problem of enjoying the being together with a נידה. But since dam besulim is not real, she's not really a נידה. Therefore, we don't actually care if there's dam coming out, so he can totally finish what he's doing, and only after they're finished do they have an issur of being together. Now the lashon of the Shulchan Aruch is when they're finished. Okay, what does it mean to be finished? So you'll see some svarim nowadays, who say basically when he comes out. Okay, as soon as he comes out, it's a problem. One second. Okay, so there are some people who write that as soon as he comes out, it's a problem. I don't think that's true. The reason I don't think that's true is because if according to the midos, can you imagine the situation where a guy comes in, he finishes being together, his bris comes out, and right away he pulls away and he goes to the other bed. Okay? That sounds super cruel. On the wedding night. Okay? That sounds super cool. That can't be. So what I think what Chazal mean is when you're finished, it means that when, according to the midos of the situation, it's called finished. In other words, when a husband and wife are together, there's a lot of energy and connection and chemicals, and they're feeling very close. Then there's a certain point where it starts going down, and it's like, okay, we could stop now, or we could do something which would be like a new thing, like a new restarting stuff. At that point, okay, we finished. Now it's time to separate. In my opinion, that's what the word finishing means. It's not a technical finishing. It's when the whole experience is finished, when it makes sense to stop it. It's not cruel in any way. Okay? When we have a situation of dam besulim, so first of all, a woman before she's married, she does not have only has to wait shiva nikiyim, obviously, right? Because since she didn't have any zera coming out of her until that time, all we have to worry about is when she finishes her vesa, she has 7 days, which is important when you're speaking to a kala. One of the first things you should speak to them is when the wedding date should be, because what a lot of people do when they want to set the wedding date is they don't want to have a chuppah נידה, so they use pills to move around the convenience of the wedding hall. And what I've seen many times is the pills cause lots of problems. And people are months and months afterwards are spotting, and it's just not worth, in my experience, just not worth going into that problem of pills. It's much better to be smart in how you schedule it. So how would you schedule it? Well, she has to wait shiva nikiyim, right? So then for the only shiva nikiyim though, so let's say she sees on the 5th of the month, or usually she says 5th, 6th, or the 7th of the month. So she should make shiva nikiyim from the latest one, and then she'll 100% sure that by the time the chasana comes, she'll be able to be mutter. The only thing is that what happens is then they're together, and then she's a basula. So let's say there's she has 7 days after, right? She sees, and then they are together, let's say the 8th or the 9th day, and then they have to wait another 4 and 7, right? At least, right? Because dam besulim is not real dam, so she'll be able to have no dam within a day, but she still has to wait 4 days because shiva nikiyim can't start till she's finished. Now we only wait 4 days for a kala, not 5 days, because it's a kala where more mako, but still it's 4 days, and then it's 7 days, and then by the time they finish shiva nikiyim, she's already either on her vesas, right? So we took this kala and chasan, and we made them wait a very long time. So the smartest thing to do is to have it come closer to the end of when she's going to see dam, right? Not too close because we don't want it to have chuppah נידה, but not too far. That this way they'll be together. And very common nowadays is that chassan and kala don't want to finish the night of a chasana. They want to wait. They want to wait 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and when people ask me to do that, I tell them I'm not sure you'll be successful, but the ones who are very into it, they feel that it's important to build up, and I respect that. It's too. First of all, they don't want to have, and they don't want to be usher to each other for a long time. But more than that, I think in a deeper way, it's quick for people to go all the way to be together, and they'd rather have a slow build up. So in that respect, I definitely think it's a good idea. So you want to have the ability to, let's say, have 1 day. And also another huge problem that happens a lot is that the chassan is exhausted. An exhausted chassan does a bad job. Now, stupid chassanim and stupid kalas, they do is they go to sleep that night, wake up in the morning, and for some reason they decide they shouldn't be together the whole day. Then they go to Sheva Brachas again. They're exhausted again. This can happen. I've had chassan happen 2-3 days until she was mamash arek, the kala, right? So you should always teach your kalas that if you're not together that night, tomorrow morning you get up, before tefillah, before everything, that's what you're going to be doing. Okay, you want to connect. You want to finish off the marriage. You want to start and finish. Everybody wants to feel married, and however long it takes, it takes. Abba Yashav used to say that the time of tell the chassan that the zman of shachris is when he finishes. After being together, that's when shachris is. Okay? So the reason is because you're oisik mitzvah patam in a mitzvah, and to be together with a besula is, in Chazal's eyes, was a complicated thing. It took a lot of expertise, and you have to think about it, and to be slow and careful, and so he's very tarud, and he can't think about any other mitzvah. So he's pater from all the mitzvahs until he finishes that. Okay, so it's smart to tell a chassan and kala to plan their chasana when she can have shiva nikiyim, and let's say 5 or 6 days before the vesas usually comes. This way they're together, and then we have a little bit of waiting time, but we have, by the time that she finishes going to the mikvah, they're already ready to go for 2.5 weeks. in case there is a chuppah נידה, right? So what happens is they you give the ring over just by putting it on top of the finger without really touching. And basically you can't be biyichud, right? So what you have to do is you have to have a small person with you, and you have to have 2 shomer at night, and you have to have 1 shomer during the day. So basically, we definitely want to avoid that. And in case someone actually has that practical thing, you have to figure out how to do it in a practical way. Okay. Okay. There is a minig on the day of the chasana that by Ashkenazim that they fast. Sfaradim do not fast. There is some kind of minhag that people take off the tachshitim at the shas of the chuppah. Some minhag Ashkenaz, also not a Sephardi minhag. Also, in my opinion, definitely neged what Chazal. That wasn't what Chazal did for sure. She definitely had tachshitim on her at the time of Chazal, without a question. So I don't. I think the minhag sounds to me very superstitious, if you ask me. Okay, and also one more thing that Chasanim and Kalas don't realize is that during Sheva Brachas, it's very important. The whole point of Sheva Brachas, the whole point of the 7 days, is that the Chasan should be focused on the Kala and he shouldn't be doing any work. That's the idea of the Sheva Yemei, not exactly the Sheva Brachas themselves, but the 7 days after, either for a woman who's never been married before, and a woman who has been married before, 3 days, we're totally focused on her, and therefore he shouldn't be doing any work, and he also shouldn't be learning. He should be basically focused on her. And there's a halacha, a minhag, that when a guy goes out after he's chasan, he shouldn't go by himself, shouldn't do shomer. And but if there's people in the street, it's not a big deal. Okay, as far as I feel, I think we finished everything. Do you have any questions? Oh, one thing I didn't say, I'm sorry. One thing I skipped. If a couple's together on the night of the chasana and she is a besula, a lot of women nowadays do not have besulim for a lot of reasons. First of all, they have tampons, they exercise. It's very common for women not to see any dam. The halacha is afal pikein for the first time they're together. If she was never together with another man, she should be considered she should asa herself after the first time they're together, like she saw dam. Now, the reason for this is because they made a takana that it wouldn't make any difference between women, and also it's possible that the zera covered up. There was a small amount of dam, the zera covered it up, so they didn't make any distinctions. So therefore, all the women are aser. In thinking about it in a panemius way, this takana is extremely weird. That they have kalas, that they made dam besulim into dam, because it's literally like a makkah. It's a very strange takana, and it wasn't always that way in Klal Yisrael. And it could be that the reason for this is not so much a נידה issue, but it's to give the woman for when a woman shifts between a basul and not a basul, it's a huge shift, right? I don't have to tell you, but it's a huge shift, and therefore the whole idea of Sheva Brachas is that she should have pius from him. She should be understand from him that he's going to take care of her. So I think it could be that Chazal wanted her to have a break. She should spend time being ma'akel and understand what happened to her or what the new situation is before they go back into it. So the reason I tell you this is because Chasanim and Kalas usually complain about this topic of Basulim, and it helps them understand it better when they realize that Chazal never do something which is negative for the wedding, negative for the couple. And if they say we're mitaken this, obviously they understood that it's better for them to have this period of grace period after the chasana. Okay, any other questions? Okay, great. Okay, so it was wonderful to learn with all of you for all the time we had together. And I'm not, you should be matzlichot and teaching all the people to become kedoshim v'tahorim and have incredible zivug and incredible shalom bayis. And any questions you always have, you can always send it back, and I'll be happy to answer.
Thank you very much.
Regards to Aaron Yiti. Hey, how are you?
How are you?
Good, you look good.
Finishing cold, right?
Yeah.
Get dressed now.
Cool.
So it's cold.